Once upon a time, in a kingdom where winter held the land in its icy grip, a queen sat by her window. The frame of the window was made of black ebony wood, a stark contrast to the white snowflakes falling gently outside. As she sewed, her needle pricked her finger, and 3 drops of blood fell onto the snow. The sight of the red against the white was so striking that she thought to herself, "If only I could have a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony." Not long after, her wish was granted, and she gave birth to a daughter who was indeed as fair as snow, as rosy as blood, and as dark-haired as ebony. They named her Snow White. But the joy of the queen's new motherhood was short-lived, for she fell ill and soon passed away, leaving the king and Snow White alone. A year passed, and the king, still mourning his wife, decided to marry again. His new wife was a beautiful woman, but she was also vain and arrogant. She had a magic mirror, and every day she would ask it, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would always reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest." Snow White, meanwhile, grew into a beautiful young girl, with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. When she was 7 years old, she was more beautiful than the queen herself. One day, the queen asked her mirror the usual question, but this time, the mirror replied, "You, my queen, are fair, it is true. But Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." Enraged by this, the queen plotted to get rid of Snow White. She ordered a huntsman to take her into the woods and kill her, bringing back her heart and lungs as proof. The huntsman, moved by pity, spared Snow White's life and let her flee into the forest. Lost and afraid, Snow White wandered through the forest until she came upon a tiny cottage. Inside, everything was small but neat and clean. There was a table with 7 little plates, each with a spoon, knife, and fork, and 7 little beds, all covered with snow white sheets. Exhausted, Snow White ate a little from each plate and drank a drop of wine from each mug before falling asleep on one of the beds. Later, the owners of the cottage returned home. They were 7 dwarfs who mined for jewels in the mountains. When they found Snow White, they were amazed by her beauty and decided to let her stay with them. In return, Snow White kept house for them, cooking, cleaning, and sewing. Meanwhile, the queen, believing Snow White to be dead, continued to ask her mirror who was the fairest in the land. Each time, the mirror would reply, "You, my queen, are fair, it is true. But Snow White, beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." Consumed by jealousy, the queen devised several plots to kill Snow White. First, she disguised herself as an old peddler woman and gave Snow White a poisoned comb, causing her to fall unconscious. Next, she disguised herself as a different old woman and gave Snow White a poisoned apple. Snow White took a bite and fell into a death-like sleep. The dwarfs, realizing what had happened, placed Snow White in a glass coffin and mourned her. One day, a prince passing through the forest saw Snow White in the coffin and was captivated by her beauty. He begged the dwarfs to let him take the coffin, and as his servants carried it away, they stumbled, dislodging the piece of apple from Snow White's throat and waking her from her slumber. The prince, overjoyed, declared his love for Snow White and took her to his castle, where they were married in a lavish ceremony. The queen, hearing of Snow White's return, attended the wedding. But when she saw Snow White alive and well, she was filled with fear and tried to flee. However, her punishment was swift and just. She was forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes until she dropped dead. Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after, ruling the kingdom with kindness and wisdom. The end.